All right, guys, now we're going to read chapter 3 of Junie B, first grader, Boss of Lunch, and it is called Cookies. I was the first one done with my lunch. That's because eating hoagies takes forever, of course. I put my lunchbox away and I looked at Herb's plate. He had 3 more foods to go. First, he had carrot sticks and applesauce and a cookie. I leaned in closer. I think that's a sugar cookie there, Herb, I said. Sugar cookies are my favorite. He nodded. Me too, Junie B. Me too. I like sugar cookies too. I touched his cookie with my finger. Yes, sirree, Bob. That's a sugar cookie, all right. I didn't get a cookie at all today. My mother packed me a fruit bar instead. Oh, said Herb. Well, fruit bars are good too. I tapped my fingers on the table. He didn't get the hint. Yes, Herbert, I know fruit bars are good, but I really wanted a cookie today, so I just wish you would share that with me, that's all. He looked at me and shrugged. Why didn't you just say so? He said. He broke his cookie into half, and he handed me some. I gushed real happy. Thank you, Herb, thank you, thank you. After that, I stuffed the cookie right in my mouth, and then I drank a sip of his milk. That tasted just like the cookies that Mrs. Gutzman used to bring to afternoon kindergarten, I said. I smiled at the thought of that woman. Gladius Gutzman was our snack lady last year, I explained to Herb. She used to bring us cookies and milk every week. I made my voice kind of secret. Only guess what? Sometimes she gave me 2 cookies instead of just 1. Because I was her favorite person in room 9, I think. Jose heard what I said. Hey! That must mean I was her favorite person in room 8, because sometimes she would give me an extra one, too. After that, me and Jose did a high five, because we were both her favorites, apparently. That woman was a gem, I tell ya, I said. What do you mean she was a gem, Junie B? Said Jose. She still is a gem. Mrs. Gutzman still works here, you know. What? I said, very surprised. Yeah, sure she does, said Herb. I met her this year already. She works right there in the kitchen. I couldn't believe my ears. Really? Really? If Mrs. Gutzman still works at our school, how come she hasn't brought us milk and cookies this year? Herb shrugged. I don't know, but she still works here. In fact, we just saw her when we were getting our hoagies. I put my hand over my mouth because that news was too good to be true. Jose laughed. If you don't believe us, go see for yourself, he said. I will, Jose. I'm going to go see for myself right now, I said, real joyful. Then I jumped right out of my seat and I zoomed into the kitchen and I hollered and hollered for Mrs. Gutzman. Chapter 4 is called Gladius. Mrs. Gutzman! Gladius Gutzman, where are you? I hollered. It's me, it's Junie B. Jones. I looked all around me. There was a long counter with children pushing trays. Has anyone seen Mrs. Gutzman? I asked the children. Does anybody know her? My friend said she's here in this kitchen, but I don't see her. I hollered her name even louder. Mrs. Gutzman! Gladius Gutzman! Then a lady came hurrying around the corner, and good news, it was her. It was Gladius Gutzman. I ran and hugged her very tight. Mrs. Gutzman, I'm so glad to see you, I said. She hugged me back. Junie B. Jones, I'm glad to see you too, she said. I smiled at her. She was wearing her same big white apron from last year. Look at you, Mrs. Gutzman, you didn't change a bit. I patted her apron. You didn't even change your clothes, apparently. Mrs. Gutzman laughed. She was wearing plastic mitts on her hands, and also she was wearing a hairnet. Hey, I remember those things from last year, I said. You told me that you wear plastic mitts and a hairnet whenever you touch food. Remember? You said it was called good hygiene because mitts and a hairnet protect our food from dirty germs and hairs. Mrs. Gutzman made a gross face. Are you sure that's the way I put it? She asked. I skipped all around her in a circle. Hey, Mrs. Gutzman, now that you found me, you could probably start bringing cookies to my classroom again. I held up one finger. I am in room 1. Room 1 comes earlier in the alphabet than room 9. So, now that you know where I am, when are you going to bring me cookies, Gladius? She did a chuckle. Then she leaned down next to me and she patted my arm. And she said, "Don't call her Gladius." After that, Mrs. Gutzman explained all about snacks. And she said first graders don't get snacks like the kindergarten kids do. First graders get cookies with their school lunches. I did a frown at that news. But what about the children who bring their lunches? Where's our cookies? Huh? Everybody got a cookie except for me and Sheldon today. Mrs. Gutzman didn't answer my question. Instead, she raised her head and looked behind me. That's when I heard my teacher's voice. "Junie B. Jones," he said kind of loud. "Exactly what do you think you are doing?" I spun around. And there she is, talking to Mrs. Gutzman. Mr. Scary's eyes looked annoyed at me. "Why did you get up from the table, Junie B? What's the story here?" Everyone was staring. I did a big gulp. Then I squeezed my eyes closed real tight and I tried to think of a story. Well, let's see. First, I was eating my brought lunch, and everyone else was eating their bought lunch. Then I was the first one finished, and then I just sat there, and I spotted Herb's sugar cookie, and I really wanted that thing, and good news, he shared. So then, the delicious cookie reminded me about Mrs. Gutzman, and what do you know? Herb and Jose said she was right here in this exact kitchen. So I had to jump up from the table and come say hello, I said. After that, I looked up at Mrs. Gutzman, kind of nervous, and I waved my fingers. "Hello," I said. "Hi," she said back. Mr. Scary shook his head. "I'm sorry, Junie B. I know Mrs. Gutzman has enjoyed seeing you, but you can't just get up from the table and run wherever you please during lunch." Mrs. Gutzman nodded. "Mr. Scary's right, Junie B. I'm so happy to see you, but you have to learn to follow the school rules." I did a sigh. "Yeah, but I really wanted to find you, Mrs. Gutzman. I missed you very much." She tapped on her chin. Maybe I have an idea. If you promise to follow the rules, you can come back tomorrow and help me in the kitchen. Would you like that, do you think?" My eyes got big and wide. "Are you kidding, Mrs. Gutzman? Is this some kind of a joke?" She smiled again. "Nope, no joke. We let children help us in the kitchen quite often. If it's okay with your teacher, I'll give you a permission slip to take home to your parents." I pulled on Mr. Scary's arm. "Say it's okay. Please, please, please." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran his fingers through his hair and he thought. And finally, he said it. He said it's okay. I clapped and danced and twirled. "I can do it, Mrs. Gutzman. I can come help in the kitchen." "Excellent," said Mrs. Gutzman. Then she reached behind the counter and handed me a permission slip. And that's not all. She reached back there one more time and pulled out a pair of brand new plastic mitts. "Here, these are for you. Wear them around your house tonight and get used to them." I did a gasp at those wonderful things. "Thank you, Mrs. Gutzman, thank you. I've always wanted some of these thingy-majigs." After that, I put them on my hands very thrilled, and I waved goodbye to Mrs. Gutzman. "See ya," I said. "See you tomorrow." Then I walked back to my lunch table with Mr. Scary, and I followed the rules the rest of the day. And there she is with her gloves. All right, tomorrow we will read chapter 5 called Practicing.